My name is Lucricia J. Kilmer. I am 29 years old. He is Jesse, 27. We had been together for almost 3 years, living together for 1. We went ring shopping 2 weeks earlier. I had already put down a deposit. That matters later. We were standing in our kitchen on a Tuesday night, the kind of ordinary evening that never warns you it is about to split your life in half. I was rinsing a mug in the sink. Jesse was leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone with that half smirk he gets whenever he already knows something I do not. Then he said it like he was announcing the weather. My ex-girlfriend wants to get coffee and catch up. You're not invited. No pause. No explanation. No. Are you okay with this? Just a statement. Tossed into the room with that sharp little edge he always used when he wanted to dare me into reacting. I asked who reached out first. He rolled his eyes so hard I thought they might stick. God, why do you always make things weird? She just wants to talk. We're adults. I said I was not thrilled about it. I said it felt disrespectful. I said maybe inviting me would make it feel less loaded. That was when his tone changed. Colder, meaner, familiar in a way I hated. This isn't about you, he said. I'm not managing your insecurity right now. Then he grabbed his keys and wallet and added over his shoulder. I'll be back later. Don't wait up. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not explosive, just clear. I replied, understood. He paused in the doorway, almost amused that I was not arguing harder. Then he smirked, satisfied, and left. He did not hear the sound of me setting the mug down. He did not see me pull out my phone and open my banking app. He did not know I was already thinking about how quiet the apartment would feel without his voice moving through every room. I did not cry. I did not rage. I did math. By the time the front door closed, I was not really his girlfriend anymore. I just had not told him yet. Once the door shut, the apartment felt bigger, not emptier, just quieter in a way that made it easier to think. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The same table where we had eaten takeout and talked about engagement timelines like they were calendar invites. The same table where I had listened to him joke about honeymoon spots and guest lists and little future details that sounded warm at the time and humiliating now. I did not rush. That was the strange part. Everything I did next felt slow and deliberate, like some part of me had already accepted the outcome and was simply following instructions. The first thing I did was search my email for the jeweler. The ring deposit confirmation came up immediately. $2,000, non-refundable after 30 days. We were on day 28. I clicked call. While the line rang, I stared at the dent in the wall near the hallway, the one left from the night Jesse slammed a door during an argument about my tone. He had said I made him feel criticized when I asked him not to text his ex-girlfriend at midnight. I remembered apologizing just to end the fight. I remembered hating myself for that afterward. The jeweler answered. I explained calmly that I needed to cancel the order. There was a brief pause, then typing. You're still within the window, he said. We can process a full refund today. I thanked him. My voice did not shake. Next came logistics. I opened our shared expenses spreadsheet, the one Jesse insisted we should keep but never actually updated. Rent was coming out of my account. Utilities, too. The lease was month to month, both our names on it, but I had paid the deposit and the first 2 months up front, when he was between jobs and told me it was only temporary. So many things had apparently been temporary. I booked a storage unit 5 blocks away. Small, practical, just enough. Then I packed. Not angrily, not dramatically. I folded my clothes the way I always do. Neat stacks, sleeves tucked in, shirts facing the same direction. I left the gifts I had bought him. The framed photos of us stayed on the shelf. They did not feel like mine anymore. Around midnight, I found the notebook in my desk drawer, the one where I had written down possible proposal ideas, a mountain trip, a quiet dinner, something intimate, something that felt like us. I stared at the page for a long time before closing it and putting it back. Before I left, I wrote a note. Just one line. No explanation, no accusation. How was coffee? I placed it on the counter exactly where he would toss his keys when he got home. Then I turned off the lights, picked up my 2 suitcases, and walked out with a sense of calm that scared me a little. He was probably laughing over coffee around then, or maybe pretending he was not crossing a line because calling it closure made it sound noble. I wondered how long it would take him to notice the silence. I slept better than I expected. The hotel room smelled like detergent and recycled air, the kind of bland nothingness that asks nothing of you. When I woke up, my phone was face down on the nightstand. I had not checked it since I left. I made coffee from the tiny machine near the television and finally turned the screen over. 3 missed calls, all from Jesse. No text yet. That tracked. He hated leaving voicemails. He liked control too much to talk into a void. I did not call him back. Instead, I went through my morning like it was any other Wednesday. Shower, makeup, blouse. The dark blazer he always said made me look too serious. I wore it anyway. I checked out, loaded my bags into my car, and drove to work. At 10:17, my phone buzzed. "Where are you?" No greeting, no concern, just irritation wrapped in 4 words. I waited 10 minutes before replying, not to play games, but because I was in a meeting and my life did not pause for him anymore. Out. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then another message came through. "Are you seriously doing this right now?" I stared at the screen and realized something uncomfortable but honest. He did not sound worried. He sounded inconvenienced. At lunch, I sat alone at my desk and scrolled through our old messages. Not to torture myself, more like confirming what I already knew. Every argument followed the same arc. I would bring something up calmly. He would dismiss it. If I pushed, I was too sensitive, too dramatic, or ruining the vibe. By 2 in the afternoon, he called again. I let it go to voicemail. This time, he left one. "Okay, this isn't funny anymore," he said, voice tight. "If you're trying to punish me, congratulations. You made your point. Call me back." Punish. That word landed harder than it should have. I was not punishing him. I was responding. After work, I drove past the apartment without slowing down. Habit tried to pull me back there anyway. Instead, I went to the storage unit and unloaded my bags. Seeing my things stacked neatly in that concrete room felt right. Temporary, but right. That night, another text came through. "We need to talk like adults." I almost laughed. We had talked. He just had not liked what my silence was saying. He came back to the apartment the following evening. I was not there, obviously. I only know how it went because of what happened next. I was sitting on the edge of a borrowed bed at my friend Elena's place, scrolling through emails, when my phone started vibrating nonstop. Call after call, text after text. "Why is half your stuff gone? Where are you staying? This is extreme, even for you." That one stung a little, even for you. Like I was known for drama instead of being known for swallowing hurt until it hardened. Then came the photo. He had taken a picture of the kitchen counter. My handwriting was unmistakable. Black pen, uneven letters. The note. "How was coffee?" The typing bubble appeared immediately. Then came the message. "Are you serious right now?" I looked at the screen and felt something settle in me. Not relief, not sadness, clarity. He thought the problem was the coffee, or his ex, or the note. The problem was that when he said, "You're not invited," what he really meant was, "You don't get a say." I finally replied with one sentence. There's nothing left to explain. The typing bubble stayed on my screen longer than I expected. Then it vanished. No reply. For the first time since this started, the silence felt sharp instead of empty. Not peaceful yet, just earned. The next morning, Jesse showed up at my office. I only knew because the receptionist buzzed my desk and said, "Your husband is downstairs." That almost made me laugh. Jesse always corrected people when they made that mistake. "Boyfriend," he would say with a little smirk, like commitment was something he liked dangling in front of me, but never quite touching. He enjoyed the future most when it stayed theoretical. I told the receptionist I was in a meeting and could not come down. That was not true. I was sitting alone at my desk staring at a spreadsheet, but I needed a minute, not to calm down, to decide who I was going to be next. He did not leave. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with a text. "So you're really going to hide now?" Hide. Another interesting word. As if stepping away from disrespect was cowardice, but going to coffee with an ex and telling your partner she was not invited was somehow mature. Jesse always had a talent for rearranging reality until his part in it looked smaller. I went downstairs. He was standing near the elevators with his arms crossed, jaw tight, scanning the lobby like he was daring strangers to notice us. He looked angry, not hurt. Put together, controlled. His shirt was crisp. His hair was styled. He had worn the same jacket he always chose when he wanted to look like the reasonable one in the room. "You embarrassed me," he said the second I walked up. Not hello, not are you okay, not can we talk. "You embarrassed me." "You disappeared," he continued. "You left a note like you're some kind of movie character." I kept my voice low. "This isn't the place." He gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, now you care about appropriateness." That was always his move. Flip the script. Make the reaction the crime. Make my boundaries look theatrical, so his behavior could stay ordinary by comparison. I looked at him for a second and asked, "Was the coffee worth it?" He scoffed. You're really stuck on that. It was just coffee. You act like I cheated. I did not correct him. I did not say the thing hanging between us. That betrayal does not always need lipstick on a cup or someone else's perfume on a collar. Sometimes betrayal is simpler than that. Sometimes it is the moment someone makes it clear your place in their life is conditional, optional, subject to their mood. I told him I had moved out. I told him the ring was refunded. I told him we were done. That was the first time his expression cracked. Not sadness, panic. The kind that hits when somebody realizes a door they assumed would stay open has actually closed. You don't get to decide that unilaterally, he snapped. We were building something. I nodded once. I was. You were keeping options. That hit him. I could see it in the way his mouth tightened, in the flicker behind his eyes. Then he said the quiet part out loud. You're throwing everything away over your ego. I smiled, but only a little. No, I'm keeping my self-respect. He stared at me like he did not recognize me anymore. The truth was, I did not fully recognize myself either, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like progress. The fallout did not explode all at once. It trickled. That night, my phone stayed quiet for a few hours, which somehow felt louder than the chaos before. I knew Jesse well enough to understand what silence from him usually meant. He was recalibrating, rewriting the story into a version he could survive. Jesse never reacted immediately when he felt like he had lost ground. He adjusted. He looked for a better angle. At 11:40, the text started again. I talked to her for 20 minutes. Nothing happened. You made me into a villain for no reason. I did not respond. Then came the pivot. I told my sister what you did, and even she thinks this is extreme. That one made me exhale slowly. Jesse loved bringing in third parties, turning private fractures into public referendums. If enough people nodded along with his version, he could pretend the issue was objective, not personal. A few minutes later, another text came through. So what? You just walk away without a conversation after everything I've put into us? There it was. The rewrite. Suddenly, he was the one who had invested. The one who had carried things. The one who had sacrificed. I sat there staring at the message and thought about all the times I rearranged my schedule for him, the weekends I shaped around his moods, the arguments I ended by apologizing because peace always seemed to cost less in the moment than honesty, the way I had slowly learned which version of myself caused the least friction. I typed a reply, deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. What I finally sent was one line. You didn't lose me when you went for coffee. You lost me when you decided I didn't matter enough to be included. He read it immediately. The dots appeared, stayed, disappeared, then nothing. The next morning I woke up lighter. Not happy, not healed, just unburdened in a way that felt unfamiliar, like I had set down something heavy I had been pretending was not heavy at all. At work, I caught myself humming under my breath. That startled me. Later that afternoon, Elena asked if I wanted to grab a drink after work. I said yes without checking my phone first. That felt new too. Small, but new. The kind of new that tells you a habit is breaking. When I got back to her place that night, there was an email from Jesse waiting in my inbox. Subject line, "Can we please talk?" I stared at it for a few seconds, then archived it unopened. Some conversations only exist to drag you back into the same loop. Same words, same blame, same performance with slightly softer lighting. I was finally out of it, and I had no intention of volunteering for another round. The first person to break the silence after that was not Jesse. It was his friend Maya. We were never close, but she had always been around. Birthdays, group dinners, brunches where she smiled too brightly and asked questions that were really judgments wearing a polite coat. Her message came in just after lunch the next day. "Hey, I know this isn't my place, but Jesse is really struggling. He didn't think you'd actually leave." I read that twice. He didn't think you'd actually leave. That was it. The whole rotten center of it. Leaving had never been real to him. Consequence had always been hypothetical. I was supposed to stay near the edge of it forever, upset enough to keep caring, but loyal enough to never move. I replied with exactly what I felt. I didn't leave to teach a lesson. I left because I learned one. Maya never answered. That evening, Jesse sent another email. This one was longer. Paragraphs. A timeline of our relationship rewritten through his lens. He talked about how stressed he had been lately, how he had felt smothered, how the coffee was supposed to be closure. He even managed to apologize for how I interpreted things, which was so perfectly him it almost made me smile. Near the end, one line finally snapped whatever last emotional thread had still been hanging on. "I just wish you had trusted me instead of walking away." I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Trust was never the issue. I trusted him when he said his ex was ancient history. I trusted him when he said boundaries were implied. I trusted him when he said I was overthinking, overreacting, being unfair. What he actually wanted was not trust. It was compliance. He wanted the version of trust that meant silence, accommodation, endurance. I closed the email without replying and archived the whole thread. Not because I was angry, because I was done. Later that night, I ran into an old coworker at the corner store near Elena's apartment. We talked for 10 minutes about nothing important. Work, weather, traffic, normal things. At one point, he asked, "How's Jessie?" I said, "We broke up." He blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry." I shrugged, and to my surprise, I meant it. Not the pain, the shrug, the lack of collapse underneath it. When I got back to Elena's place, I noticed something strange. I was not checking my phone anymore. Whatever storm Jessie had stirred up, I was no longer standing in the rain with him. About a week later, I went back to the apartment for the last time. I checked first to make sure he was not home, not because I was afraid of a confrontation, but because I did not want one. Closure, I had learned, is usually just another argument wearing a softer coat. The apartment looked almost exactly the same, but it felt staged now, like a set after filming ends. His sneakers were still by the door. The candle I used to light when I wanted the place to feel peaceful sat untouched on the coffee table. The throw blanket I picked out was folded over the couch like none of this had happened. I moved quickly, methodically. The last few things I had left behind on purpose. Books, a coat, a charger. Small things I did not need immediately, but did not want lingering there like evidence that I had once made a home inside his life. In the bedroom, I noticed something on the dresser that nearly made me laugh. The ring box. Empty, obviously. He must have gone looking for it. That little square of velvet sat there like a question he had not wanted answered. I looked at it for a long second, then turned away. I did not take anything else. I did not leave another note. On my way out, I ran into our neighbor in the hallway. He smiled in that careful way people do when they already sense the truth but want to give you room to lie if you need to. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "just moving on." He nodded like he understood more than he said. That night, Jessie texted me for the first time in days. I saw the ring box. No accusation, no anger, just that. I waited an hour before answering. "You told me I wasn't invited. I took that seriously." The dots appeared, then disappeared. That was it. No defense, no comeback, no clever line. For the first time since this started, he did not know what to say. And I realized something important in that silence. He had expected me to orbit him forever, to wait politely while he tested other gravitational pulls and still be standing there when he came back. But I was not angry anymore. I was just gone. And it turns out that was the one outcome he never planned for. 2 weeks passed before the narrative around us started to shift. Not in my head, in the outside world. Through mutual friends, through acquaintances, through that loose social web that forms when two people share enough dinners, birthdays, and holidays that the breakup stops belonging only to them. Apparently, Jessie was blindsided. Apparently, I left without warning. Apparently, the coffee had been innocent and my reaction had been cold, dramatic, even unhinged depending on who was telling it. I did not correct anyone. That was another lesson I did not expect to learn this way. You do not owe your silence an explanation. People who want to understand will eventually ask better questions. People who want a villain usually pick one first and fill in the details later. One Friday night, Elena mentioned that Jessie had posted something vague on social media. A black screen, white text. One of those statements designed to look raw while still being polished enough for strangers to admire. She read it aloud from her phone. "Sometimes the people who say they love you leave the fastest." I felt nothing. No anger, no embarrassment, no urge to defend myself, just the mild, familiar recognition of a pattern. Pain turned into performance. Accountability blurred into poetry. Jessie had always been good at creating atmospheres that made him look deeper than he was. A few days later, he tried a new angle. Not through me, through Elena. She came into the kitchen while I was making coffee and held out her phone. "He messaged me," she said carefully. "Do you want to see it?" I wiped my hands on a towel and nodded. The message was brief. Too brief, which meant it had been edited down to look harmless. "I hope Lucricia is doing okay. I never meant for things to end like this." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. That line irritated me more than the dramatic posts ever could, not because it sounded cruel, because it sounded tender in exactly the way people use when they are still trying to control how the story feels after they have already lost control of the facts. He did not mean for things to end like this. Of course he didn't. He had never expected things to end at all. Elena watched my face. "Do you want me to respond?" "No," I said. "There's nothing useful left to say." And there wasn't. That was the hardest part for a while, learning that finality is rarely satisfying in the dramatic way people imagine. It is not a cinematic argument in the rain. It is usually much quieter than that. Just the slow acceptance that some people only begin respecting your silence when they realize they can no longer translate it into a temporary mood. The following week, I went back to the apartment one last time. I had already taken most of what mattered, but there were still a few small things left behind. A box of books, a winter coat, my grandmother's ceramic dish that had been sitting on the kitchen shelf for months. I texted Jesse first to make sure he was not there. He replied almost immediately, "I'm out. Go ahead." No extra words, no bait. The apartment looked almost exactly the same, and that unsettled me more than if it had been wrecked. His shoes were still by the door. The lamp in the corner still cast the same warm light across the living room. The plant I bought was somehow still alive, though one side of it had started to yellow from neglect. For a second, the whole place felt like a paused version of a life I had almost kept living. I moved quickly. Books into a box, coat over my arm, charging cable from the bedside table. Then I walked into the bedroom and stopped. The ring box was sitting on the dresser, empty, of course. But there it was, open, velvet lining exposed, like proof of a conversation neither of us was ever going to finish. He must have gone looking for the ring after he got my note. Maybe he thought I was being dramatic until he saw the box. Maybe that was the moment the whole thing became real to him. I stood there looking at it longer than I meant to. Not because I missed the proposal that never happened. Because I realized how close I had come to binding myself to someone who thought my dignity was negotiable. I did not take the box. I did not leave a note. I just picked up the last of my things and walked out. On the way downstairs, I ran into our neighbor in the hallway. He gave me that careful smile people wear when they can tell something happened but are trying to be decent about it. "Moving out?" he asked. "Finish moving out," I said. He nodded slowly. "Hope everything's okay." The strange thing was, for the first time, I did not need to lie. "It will be," I said. That night, Jesse texted me. I saw the ring box. That was all he wrote. No accusation, no defense, no attempt to joke his way out of discomfort. Just that one sentence. I stared at it, then set my phone down for nearly an hour before answering. "You told me I wasn't invited. I took that seriously." The response bubble appeared, stayed, disappeared, then nothing. And I realized something in that silence that I had been circling for weeks without saying out loud. Jesse had expected me to orbit him forever, to stay close while he tested emotional distance with other women, old attachments, half-open doors, to be the one fixed point in the room while he explored whether he still wanted to be somewhere else. But I was not orbiting anymore. I was gone. And that, more than the note or the ring refund or the apartment, was the one thing he never planned for. A few days later, Maya messaged me again. This time, the tone was more careful. "I know you probably don't want to hear this, but he keeps saying he thought you loved him enough to fight." I read that line twice. Fight. That word again. What Jesse called fighting had never really meant repair. It meant argue, stay, negotiate against myself, turn one clear act of disrespect into a murky conversation about intentions, feelings, timing, and whether I was being fair. Fight, in his language, meant proving my love by remaining available after being diminished. I typed back before I could overthink it. Love isn't proven by staying where you're treated like an option. Maya never responded. After that, something inside me finally went quiet. Not numb. Settled. I stopped checking whether he had posted anything new. Stopped wondering who believed him. Stopped replaying the kitchen conversation, like there had been some hidden version of it where he respected me more if I had just answered differently. There was not. The story had already told me what it was. I had simply taken longer than I wanted to admit to believe it. That weekend, I signed the lease on a new apartment. It was small. 1 bedroom, quiet street, a place with too much light in the morning and not enough storage in the kitchen. Nothing fancy, nothing symbolic, just mine. And that mattered more than I expected. The first night in my new apartment, I sat on the floor surrounded by half-open boxes and ate takeout straight from the carton. The place echoed when I moved. The windows rattled a little when buses passed outside. There was a lamp in the corner and a cheap set of curtains I knew I would replace eventually, but none of that mattered. For the first time in a long time, the air around me felt neutral. It did not belong to someone else's moods. It did not carry the weight of waiting for the next small disrespect to dress itself up as a misunderstanding. As I unpacked, I found the spare key Jesse had given me months earlier, still hooked to my old keyring. I held it in my palm for a second, then dropped it into the junk drawer. Not dramatically, not as some symbolic ritual, just one more habit breaking. Later that night, I found myself thinking about the version of me who had still been standing in that kitchen on a Tuesday, rinsing a mug, while a future quietly collapsed in front of her. I felt tenderness for her, not shame, not even anger anymore, just tenderness. She had tried so hard to be reasonable, to be modern, to be understanding, to prove she was not threatened by things that should have threatened her. She had been translating disrespect into something manageable because naming it clearly would have forced her to act sooner. A month passed. People still asked how I was, always in that careful tone people use when they are afraid grief might crack open if they press too hard. I kept giving the same answer. I'm fine. And the strange thing was, I meant it. Not fine as performance. Not fine because I had forgotten what happened. Fine because the pain had already finished doing the part of the work it needed to do. Fine because I was no longer bleeding from it. Jesse tried one last time indirectly. He did not reach out to me. He sent a message to Elena instead. She showed it to me one evening while we were drinking wine out of mismatched glasses in my new kitchen. His message was short, careful, soft around the edges. I hope Lucricia is doing okay. I never meant for things to end like this. I looked at the screen and felt the same quiet detachment I had been growing into for weeks. That sentence used to be the kind of thing that would have pulled me back in. Not because it was enough, but because it was almost enough. Almost sincere. Almost accountable. Almost the version of a man who had finally understood what he had done. But I never meant for things to end like this. Was still centered on his surprise, not my experience. It still made the ending sound like an unfortunate accident instead of the direct result of how he chose to treat me. I handed Elena her phone back. Don't answer. She nodded. You sure? Yes. Because here was the truth I had not fully understood until everything stopped. The ending was not the note. It was not the ring refund. It was not even the coffee. It ended the moment Jesse spoke to me like I was optional. Everything after that was just me catching up to a decision he had already made without realizing it. He had told me exactly where I stood in his life. I had simply believed him. A few days later, Maya sent one more message. I almost did not open it. Almost. But curiosity still has strange habits. He says he thought you loved him enough to fight. I stared at the words for a long moment. Fight. That word used to confuse me. Then it used to wound me. By then, it just clarified things even more. Jesse did not mean fight for us. He meant stay. He meant argue until I got tired enough to accept less. He meant prove my devotion by remaining available after being dismissed. He meant shrink my standards and call it loyalty. I did not reply. Instead, I deleted his contact completely. Not blocked. Deleted. There is a difference. Blocking is reactive. It still carries heat. Deleting is colder than that. Cleaner. It is what you do when you are no longer waiting for anything useful to come through that channel again. That weekend, I finished unpacking the bedroom. I put sheets on the bed without worrying whether someone else liked the color. I stacked my books on the shelf the way I wanted. I bought a cheap little plant from the corner shop downstairs and set it by the window. It looked fragile, but alive. I stood there looking at it and realized something that hit harder than I expected. I did not miss Jesse. I missed the version of myself I had been before I started explaining my worth. That was the grief underneath all of it, not the loss of him, the loss of me. The version of me who did not second-guess whether respect was too much to ask for. The version of me who did not confuse being accommodating with being loving. The version of me who had not yet learned how quietly a person can disappear inside a relationship while still showing up every day. And that version of me was coming back. Not all at once, not dramatically, but enough. Enough that I could feel it in small things, in the way I slept, in the way I moved through stores without checking my phone, in the way I made dinner without mentally narrating how it might be judged, in the way silence no longer felt like a punishment. Sometimes I still thought about the note on the counter. How was coffee? People would probably assume it was sarcasm, revenge, a dramatic last line. But it was not. Not really. It was a real question. How was the coffee worth the casual cruelty of making your girlfriend feel like a complication? How was that brief little moment of ego, freedom, nostalgia, or whatever he had been chasing, worth the future he had been asking me to help build? How was the version of himself who needed to keep a door open with his ex-girlfriend more important than the woman standing right in front of him? Maybe one day he would answer those questions honestly. Maybe he would not. Either way, they were not mine to carry anymore. I do not hate him. That surprises some people when they hear enough of the story. They want a villain and a victim. They want me to spit his name like poison, or say I hope one day he suffers exactly the way he made me suffer. But that is not what I feel. I hope he gets coffee with whoever he wants. I hope one day he understands why someone can love you deeply and still walk away quietly. I hope he learns that being calm does not mean being weak, and that not everyone who leaves is trying to punish you. Some people leave because they finally understand that staying would be the greater betrayal to themselves. As for me, my apartment is starting to feel like home now. The plant is still alive. The boxes are mostly gone. The mornings are mine again. I sleep on my side of the bed without apologizing for it. I make plans without wondering how they will be received. I move through my life without bracing for someone else to make me feel foolish for wanting to be considered. And that is enough. Some endings arrive with screaming, some with slammed doors, some with spectacle. Mine arrived with a sentence, "You're not invited," and then eventually with another, "Understood." That was the whole thing, really. He told me what my place was. I believed him. Then I left. Some answers only come after you go.